Vanessa is a vibrant communications and school PR pro with more than 9 years of experience, including leading district-wide communications and public education. A born and raised Californian, she is passionate about crafting compelling stories, driving community engagement, and creating strategies that truly connect with people. When she's not managing multi channel marketing campaigns or serving as a media liaison, you can find Vanessa indulging in her foodie side. I have joined you and seen your foodie side at local spots and exploring the great outdoors. A true football fanatic, she will travel far and wide to catch a game, but I bet that her favorite team is not what you would expect, which is something I learned as we were preparing for today. Because although she represents our beautiful Bay Area, she actually is a fan of the Denver Broncos. I I don't know. I don't know. There's a good story. Find Vanessa and ask her about it the next time you get the chance. And today we're going to be talking about an incident that a lot of us probably kind of experienced third party when she was at CalSPRA in conference was at the 2023
Mhm.
conference in San Diego. And I was telling Vanessa that she looked even paler than she normally does. It was rough. But she has emerged as a strong school PR leader and still the kind and generous human that she has always been. And without further ado, and I didn't really even make you blush, or I can't tell that I made you blush.
I always wear a lot of blush on purpose, then you can just never tell.
Yeah, smart strategy. See, look at that. There's that strategic side coming out, Vanessa. All right, without further ado, Vanessa, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. So, thank you guys all for being here, and for anyone who decides that they want to listen to this later, kudos to you. So, again, I'm Vanessa Wedderburn, and I'm excited to dive into this topic with you. Before I get started, I do want to share Trinette and I were having a conversation very briefly before, and it was really about presentation styles and how, everyone kind of has their own way of doing it. And I think over, the last decade, people have really come into owning their presentation styles more, versus there seemed to be a way in which everyone kind of presented very similarly in the past. And we'll just call it, the boomer generation. They all kind of had their same way of going through things. So you're going to see that my style is very different. It's very open and honest. I'm hoping I'm not talking at you as much as just bringing you into this story, and then hopefully it'll make you feel seen, if you've ever dealt with anything like this. And even if you haven't dealt with these particular, crises, I'm just hoping that, if you've ever felt in your position, sitting in your chair, like, oh my gosh, no one knows what it's like to go through this, like, I hope through going through this presentation with me, you'll see that I do know exactly how you feel. And not only do I know, but all of CalSPRA, all the SPRAs, everyone knows what it's like to be in your shoes. They may not know the exact shoe feeling, but we all are supposed to be leaning in on each other during these hard times in order to build that resiliency that we need to be positive and to have the impact that we want to have on our schools and on our students. So I am going to move past my bio because, well, we kind of already talked about it. I will say I do have experience, unfortunately, with massive fires, floods, power outages, school violence, and what most of this is about is a stabbing on one of the campuses. The key themes for the presentation today is going to include navigating that uncertainty, fostering resilience, and driving positive change within my district. And before we dive in, I really want to walk you through a little bit deeper of what it was like for me to personally navigate all of this. I worked through a lot of challenges, but I didn't work through them alone. I collaborated with my cabinet team, with principals, with teachers, and in some aspects, community members, as well as the local media. And that helped shape new leadership habits within myself and really helped me step into a role of leadership when at the time I didn't necessarily feel like a leader. And I'm hoping that I will leave you with some practical takeaways that you can apply to your own work at the end of this. So, first of all, I wanted to set the landscape of a crisis. I think we've all seen at least these two little comic strips of this meme. I don't think anyone who's worked in school PR has never not felt this way. When everything is kind of hitting that fan, and you have to be the one that's like, it's fine, it's cool, don't worry, like, we got this, we're gonna handle this. Oh, I'm sorry, the media wants to talk to me. It's fine, everything's fine, we're good, we're good, we're good. Um, so I have to include that in here as I talk about all the things that I was dealing with during that time, which is a lot of press coverage. Here in Santa Rosa, we do still have a local paper, although they recently got bought out. So we'll see how things go with that. But because we have a local Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper here, they have kind of nothing better to do than to cover anything and everything happening in education in Sonoma County, and in particular in the district I worked at, which was Santa Rosa City Schools, because Santa Rosa is the largest city in Sonoma County, and so therefore it is the one that serves most of the students that are here in Sonoma County. So we had a lot of press coverage. And they were spinning their own narrative. The editorial board there is all of a certain age, all of a certain gender, and all of a certain hair color, if you know what I mean. So they had their own ideas of biases and things of which they wanted to do when they were spinning narratives about how the district was being managed, how things were running, knowing that their lens often came from the good old times back in their day when they went to these schools. So we were battling a lot of that. We also dealt with a ton of animosity with our own local law enforcement. Back in over the pandemic, our school board had decided, to eliminate a contract with our SROs, or safety resource officers, that the Santa Rosa Police Department provided at no cost to the district. And they had been with the district, I want to say, since the 90s. So these were their own friends that were suddenly no longer going to have a place within the own police department. Some were forced into retirement. And so as a result, the police department no longer saw the district as neighbors, as friends, as serving the same community. It very much became a us versus them. And then throughout my experience, our school board, who was made up of 7 members, they really took on their own narrative of it's us versus our community, which is an unfortunate thing to go through. Some school boards are really good at remembering how why they are in the seat they are in, how to go about serving their community. There are times school board members just get wrapped up in the headlines and they become very defensive, because we're all human beings, and it's very easy to read something about yourself and not take it personally. And a lot of media coverage was happening at the time, and it was unfortunate that we had a lot of I would say about 5 of the 7 that were taking things very personally and therefore lashing out against the community themselves. The other thing is we had a lot of impact on students and educators in our community during this time. The adults were just so dysregulated. It seems like no one knew how to kind of step up and be a leader during these tough times, and it was really because we had all these compounding traumas. We had a major fire, the Tubbs fires in 2017. In 2019, we had the Kincaid fire. So our whole area had been going through trauma after trauma, and schools burning down and things being closed and families being uprooted. And then we had the pandemic that everyone nationwide went through, but it was just another laying trauma on top of that. And so what we experienced was kids coming back to school and having the behavior problems that we all have had to navigate since then. I know everyone can relate to that, whether it's messing with the bathrooms, or starting fights and bringing weapons onto campus. There was all of this stuff happening, and it felt like the adults themselves were just as dysregulated as the students, unfortunately. And they tend to make things about them and forgetting the why. It's the students. But you had everything from the administrative side of things to our certificated staff and the unions. There just seemed to be a lot of circling conversations going on, and it all had to do about adults and the way they felt, and not so much focused on the students and being student centered. And our local media outlets were really starting to pick up on that. And then we were having an influx of gang activity that was, we this area, people often cannot believe that there are gangs in Santa Rosa. Hate to break it to you, there are gangs in all of California. They exist in there's just some communities try to brush it under the rug better than others. But what happened during the pandemic is you had a lot of young boys and girls who are 11, 12 years old, who are at home alone now, and living in neighborhoods that have these gangs, and their parents are having to go to work. And so they were seeking familial outlets through the gangs, and were getting really indoctrinated and brought into those fold. And so we've seen, unfortunately, at least in this community, a lot of the students within our district at middle school age slowly dipping their toes into that gang activity and those gang families. And so that brings us to a lot of stuff that took place, including a death of a student at one of the high schools that was within my district. I was at Calspert in San Diego when the stabbing took place. It was on March 1st, 2023. I can tell you that it happened around, I want to say 10:45 a.m. I was about ready to leave my hotel room to go do pre-conference. And then my phone stopped ringing. And it was just, first it was, there's been a stabbing. This is awful. There's a manhunt. There's a student who's on the run. They hadn't found the student who did the stabbing. We don't know if the student that has been stabbed is going to live. It was insanity. And in that moment, the first question I asked was, wait, which high school? Because I wasn't there. Remind me, which high school is it? And when they told me it was Montgomery High School, the things that triggered in my head is, hey guys, we have three elementaries and one middle school in the vicinity of where this is all happening. We need to put everyone in a shelter in place, and we need to send out those messages now. So that's immediately, like, without asking for anyone's permission, I was like, no, this is happening, and sent that messaging out. Meanwhile, I'm getting the reporters that I already had a rapport with. They're calling me, and I'm just having to tell them I don't have a statement at this time. I had never experienced anything like this. So I'm looking to my superintendent of, I don't know, what do you want me to do with this? I was, I want to say 7 months on the job, and I had worked in school PR prior to that, but to be the person to make the call for how should we handle these things, that was a new hat for me. And so it was really interesting I'm looking at her. She's busy dealing with the fallout of what's happening. She's actually physically at the school. She's dealing with the police. There's all this misinformation out there. There's stuff being posted on Facebook. There's stuff being tweeted. There's just everything. And the first thing that she responds back to me is, I don't want you talking to anyone. So that became my directive. Even though on the inside, I felt that I don't think that's the right move here, because if we don't tell our story, then other people are going to tell it for us. I also had to respect what my superintendent was telling me to do, which she, hindsight's always 2020. And I know if she could have gone back, she would have made a different decision. She was also a new superintendent and didn't know what she herself was doing. And I think we were all just honestly chickens with our heads cut off. And I felt it very strongly that they had wished I was physically there, being in San Diego versus Santa Rosa, which is it's a full plane flight away. It's not a quick drive. So that proposed its own challenges. And I the next day was put in touch um, with some professionals with F3 and Caroline Finders in particular. She's wonderful. She's still a close colleague of mine to this day. But if I had not had her, if I had not had the people at Calspra, who I immediately start texting, I was like, I'm not going to make it to this. This is happening to me. Like, guys, I don't know what to do. And everyone started flooding me with talk to Trent, talk to this person, talk to this person. Like, they will at least tell you. And I just had this long running notebook of like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And even if I wasn't in a place where I was given permission to do things, I at least knew I had an outline of things that I should do. So I wanted to share this video briefly with you guys. This was the immediate press conference that happened literally just following the event, after all the kids had left school. And you'll see that the police department, you'll see their attitude towards the district and how this became the overarching narrative because we didn't get ahead of it throughout the next, I want to say, 7 months.
So today we're obviously gathered for some rather somber news, and one of the things that we're going to discuss today is the safety of our school community and our students is so important to the Santa Rosa Police Department, to our Santa Rosa School District, and certainly to our parents and community. I'll briefly go through a summary of what occurred today. So this morning at approximately 11:11, the Santa Rosa Police Department received 911 calls reporting a school fight here on the campus at Montgomery High School, located at 1250 Hammond Drive. Officers from the Santa Rosa Police Department arrived on the scene within 4 minutes. So at 11:15, uniformed Santa Rosa police officers were on the scene and began the initial investigation. And what that investigation determined is that two juniors, which are students here at Montgomery High School, entered a classroom. They weren't students in this particular classroom. It was an art classroom. They entered the classroom and engaged in a physical altercation with the student who was in the classroom. That was a freshman student. All three of them were male students here at the campus. The initial fight breaks out. The school, there were 27 students which are inside that classroom. There was one teacher and 3 teacher aides. So there were 31 individuals inside that classroom. The fight breaks out, physical altercation, and the teachers immediately jump into action and they break up the initial fight. Unfortunately, moments later, the fight continued, and at that point, the student who was inside the classroom produced a knife. The knife was described as a folding knife with a black handle. It had a blade of approximately 4 to 5 inches. That student produced a knife and started engaging into 2 students who had come into the classroom. Both those students were stabbed. One of those students received what preliminary appears to be 3 stab wounds to his upper body. One student received 1 stab wound to his left hand. Both those students left the classroom, started to assess their injuries, and walked to the school office here and engaged with the school nurse. Our officers immediately contacted them, and both the students were alert and conscious and were providing initial statements. Our medical staff arrived here on the scene and quickly started treating the students, and they were transported to a local hospital. Unfortunately, one of the students, who's a 16-year-old male and a juvenile here, or a junior here at the Monty campus, passed away at that hospital. The other student is being treated for his injuries and is expected to survive. As this initial investigation was going on, the officers in the scene determined that the student who had stabbed the two other students had fled heading in a northeast direction. We continued to get officers examining the campus. We had 36 Santa Rosa officers respond to this incident and started combing the area. We had mutual aid assistance from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department, and the Sonoma County's helicopter Henry 1 aided in our search. We eventually got witnesses from St. Eugene's Cathedral, which reported that they had seen a student or a young man hiding in the creek behind the St. Eugene's Cathedral campus. Our officers scoured that area and were able to locate a 15-year-old juvenile who was hiding in the creek bed there, who was laying down on his stomach, trying to conceal himself. Officers slowed down. They used restraint. They didn't use any force, and they were safely able to take this young man into custody. The young man did not have any weapons in his possession. Our officers are still scouring the area looking for the knife which was used in this assault. Obviously, this is an ongoing investigation, and we're going to be spending a lot of resources interviewing the 31 students and the teachers who were in the class, working with our school campus, and the Santa Rosa Police Department is ensuring that when the school does return to their full duties here at the school campus, that we'll have officers here in the morning to be able to make sure that our students and their parents understand that we have a safe campus here in the Santa Rosa campus. I'm going to turn it over to our school superintendent, Anna Trinell, and she's going to talk about the school's response, and then we can both answer some questions and get a little bit more with some of the specifics that you may have. So I'll turn it over to Anna.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. I'd like to acknowledge Stephanie Manieri, our school board president, and Omar Medina, our school board vice president, who are here as well. This is truly a sad day. The tragedy that happened here today is heartbreaking. Our thoughts are with the students involved, their families, friends, classmates, and staff of Montgomery High School. Right now, our focus is on meeting the immediate physical and emotional needs of our students and staff. I want to thank the many emergency responders who assisted at Montgomery High School today, including Santa Rosa Police Department and the Sonoma County Office of Education. I also want to acknowledge the staff here at Montgomery who worked quickly to ensure that our campus followed emergency protocols in order to keep students and staff safe. This investigation, as you have heard, is ongoing. We will be sharing more information about whether Montgomery will be open tomorrow by 6 p.m. this evening.
All right, so now we'll take a few minutes of questions about any more specific details, but understanding this is still a very preliminary investigation, we provided some of the basic information that we have, but I'll take some questions. Very preliminary, the officers arrived on the scene, assessed the student, and saw that he had 3 stab wounds to the upper body. They provided what we call a chest seal to be able to seal that wound, and immediately the medical providers came on and transported him to the hospital, and I don't have any more details on that.
I didn't hear you. A chest what?
Chest seal.
Do we know why the two targeted the third kid?
It's very early in the investigation, but it appears that there had been some previous altercations between these students. That'll be one of the things that our investigators are looking into, and we're looking for students that may have information about that to come forward to the Santa Rosa Police Department. Another thing that we're seeking is any videos that may have students may have recorded of this incident that they were able to do. So we encourage any students or parents that become aware of videos to contact the Santa Rosa Police Department. You can contact our violent crimes team at 707-543-3590 and to be able to contact our violent crime detectives, and we are certainly looking for any video evidence from this case.
So this is immediately how I felt after watching that. What was cut was as they were continuing to ask questions, the chief of police made a statement of, well, if they would have allowed us to keep cops on campus, this probably wouldn't have happened. And so that became the soundbite of the entire thing, instead of the lovely message that I wrote for Anna to share during the press conference. It was also unfortunate that I wasn't there physically, because they had their PIO who was also able to answer questions. And so instead of the district being able to take ownership, of the events that took place, but just also try to own the messaging, it was already owned by the police department, who are also seeking funding from taxpayers, who also have their own bottom lines, who are also trying to prove why they should have been allowed to stay on campus. And so it turned into this very politicized issue, and it was something that nobody was really prepared for. Let me see here. So this is, after this ad runs, this will show you kind of the outburst that we were receiving from our community following all of this great fun stuff.
Canceled today and tomorrow at Montgomery High School in Santa Rosa. Police continue to investigate that deadly stabbing, and parents are asking tough questions. They say the school is partly to blame. Here's NBC Bay Area's Jody Hernandez.
He just got his driver's license with a big old smile on his face. He had the world in his hands. I mean, he was ready to do anything.
But now 16-year-old Jaden Pienta's family is faced with the unthinkable, planning his funeral.
We've been at the funeral home all morning trying to make arrangements to have a 16-year-old boy buried. It's tragic, and there's no words that can explain how horrible it is. No words.
Pienta was fatally stabbed in a Montgomery High School classroom yesterday morning when police say he and his friend got into an altercation with a freshman who pulled out a knife. Pienta was stabbed in the chest and back, his friend in the hand.
Right now, they're really trying to recreate exactly what happened in that classroom leading up to the stabbing and during the stabbing.
I want to make it very clear that the school and the school district failed my son, and they failed Jaden and failed the rest of the students that attend this school.
So that became the overall narrative following all of this. And it started becoming clear to us that we needed to try to take ownership back as best as we could. So we ended up doing a handful of different things, including listening to these crowds of students and teachers at board meetings.
Students banded together to demand that a North Bay school district take action to keep them safe. Students across Santa Rosa walked out of class again, rallying to keep their campuses safer after a 16-year-old was killed in a classroom fight at Montgomery High School. And that's not all.
So that just shows you from a high level of how
students banded together to demand that a North Bay
for the protests. We pretty much were like, the protests are going to happen. We're not going to tell them they can't do it. So we ended up fully supporting these protests. And our high schools, 5 of which we had, all had walkouts. And what we did was we just sent staff to every single location so that there were extra adults there just to maintain the civility of these protests. They all converged at our district office, and we let the students just share whatever it was that they were feeling. Then we decided to host a listening session for the community that was open to the entire community, and that went for about 4 hours. Honestly, what it ultimately turned out to be was the community was really upset, and they needed to feel heard because they felt like the district wasn't listening, because the district wasn't taking action. So what we had to do was give them the spaces to share everything that they wanted to feel, and do it in a way of which was proactive in letting the media know and inviting the media in and showing ourselves as being good partners, not trying to hide behind anything, not trying to placate blame or anything like that. So this is how we ended up looking. This is how I ended up feeling after the storm of everything coming from every angle. And I will share, reporters don't work 9 to 5. Reporters work 24 hours. Like, you might have a different morning reporter from an evening reporter, but they work 24 hours. So it got to the point where my phone was ringing at midnight asking me for comment for the 4 a.m. airing of the news. And there were a couple times where the newspapers or the news outlets, and if I Google my name to this day, I can still find it, was, the spokesperson wouldn't respond to us. Like, but what they're not writing in there is it was 1 a.m. when you called me, and I'm a person, and I need to, sleep. So we were running on short fuses and everything else, and we were hosting these community events. And what came out of these community events were a lot of these politicized call to actions for police officers, this, and this, but there were also people that were coming to the podium and sharing positive things about what was going on, and positive things about what's happening with their child's education, and positive things that were happening within their schools. So it became a strategy for us to, again, not hide away from anything damaging, but to also find really great opportunities to entice the media to come to our campuses for a good thing, for a fun thing, for something that was highlighting our students better. This was just a long list of headlines that I dealt with on top of having a student death. We were just everywhere. We were everywhere. Wanting to reinstate campus officers, child abuse at a elementary school, students involved in a fight at the middle school with a knife, and budget shortfalls and layoffs, and you just, like, one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And it was starting to become really, really heavy and really hard. And when I had come into this role, I didn't anticipate just how reactive the work was going to be. And it taught me how to triage communication and how to balance transparency with sensitivity, and how to make decisions without perfect information. Because a lot of times I had just enough information to be able to make a comment or to send out a notification to families. But information was never going to be perfect until something is completely done. And at that point, it's too late to communicate about it. So it's constantly reminding yourself that there is no way to perfectly do any of this. You got to just give yourself some grace and do the best with what you have available. I tell everyone, when it comes to crisis communications, no matter what it is, if it's a power outage, right, which could become a big crisis, but it's small potatoes, right? It's always best to just very quickly send out notes to families, because in today's day and age of, the social media and everything being at your fingertips, if 10 minutes have gone by since something happened at your school, parents are going to know about it whether you send a message or not. So you might as well be the one to get in front of it. I learned that showing up, even when I didn't have answers, was often the most important thing I could do. And just physically being present, being seen as working hand in hand. Things I dealt with before the big shooting or the big stabbing was, we had a transient enter one of our elementaries on the second day of school, and none of the staff noticed. And suddenly this transient walks into a kindergarten classroom. So, dealt with a significant storm that led to all this flooding and school closures, all these knives, poor kids, like, my heart goes out to them. So many kids feel like they need to bring knives to school. Maybe it's because of their walking routes to school or what have you, but at least, in my time of working at the district, we just had so many kids that were bringing knives, and not because they were necessarily going to use it on another kid. They just, they were arming themselves for whatever reason they felt they needed to. And then we had a lot of infrastructure issues. We have old schools and no money for them. And we had raw sewage coming up, and that was being spotlight in the news. And, so I just felt like the district really couldn't do anything right. And so I took it upon myself as to be the face of somewhat positivity, even amidst all this stuff, and remembering to direct the narrative and reminding people of why we were there. And that was for the students, always serving the students. Students first is the best way to get through any crisis. And it also it helped me mentally when things were just so crazy and heavy. I would just go and sit in on a kindergarten classroom reading time. And like that would help, right? Remind me of, okay, this is why I'm doing it. Like these kiddos, they need someone. Um, and so to talk a little bit about building that resiliency, you need to understand it. And psychology recognizes that resilient individuals going through significant life events don't always recover effortlessly. I think we all have a really good job as PR people of putting that mask on and pretending like everything is okay. And sometimes we aren't taking the self-care that we need on the inside. And so even when we're knocked down by what has happened, the darkest times still lead to growth if you take the time to really process what you're going through. If you would have told me everything happens for a reason when I was going through it, I would have wanted to smack you. But now I feel like I have this kind of badge of honor. I feel a lot more resilient. I feel like anytime a district or any of my colleagues need help with any kind of crises, I'm like super cool as a cucumber, guys, because I've been there, done that. I also find that it's great to ask someone to help you who is not directly impacted, because they can provide you with that extra support that someone who is not getting those added stresses of living through it go through. Like they have that calmer disposition that you need in that time. And sometimes it's like a virtual pat on the back, like a rub on the back, like it's okay, we're going to get through this, I got you. So I started working on building resilience in the face of adversity when it came to these stories. And so here's just a few things. Like we broke ground on a building at the same high school where that tragic event happened. And look, there's all these students smiling. And here are seventh graders, which our middle schools were constantly in the news for bad behavior. Well, instead, here's a story about them learning life-saving skills. Students participating in the Ruber Bridges walk to school day. These were the things where I was constantly planting with our media partners. I have this thing coming up. I swear it's going to be great photography wise. I can get you some pre-interview stuff, but I also played ball with them a little bit. Hey, we are hearing this might happen with you. I was always very responsive to the hard stories or hard questions that they were asking. And it kind of became this like, you know, the seesaw of like, I'd give to them, they'd give to me. I'd give to them, they'd give to me. And we ended up working very collaboratively in that way to the point where I was able to softly give them the criticism of, hey, like, I appreciate what you're doing in your job. I know it's what you signed up for. I know you're serving your community. I just want to tell you, though, that in light of all of this negative stuff, here's how things are going at the district, and here's how we are being perceived. And I want to remind you that we're public servants and we are serving kids at a public school who can't pay for private school or switch schools. Like this is their school. So can we also shine a light on the positive things happening? And they were very responsive to that of, sometimes the journalist in them is just, it's kind of like a dog with a bone, right? And it's like that reminder of like, hey, like I get it, this is probably really exciting for you and you're excited to dive into this hard-hitting stuff, but let's do some of this soft stuff too, because we are all part of this community. It's not just us. So here are some practical tips that I want to share in developing resilience. And that's because I will tell you, don't do what I did. I was extremely unhealthy when the event happened. Especially being away, it made me feel like I had to work even harder because I wasn't physically there. I had this internal pressure that I was putting on myself. So I stayed in my hotel room and worked nonstop, would only sleep for about 3 hours and would get back on and be dealing with things. And I wasn't eating. And truth be told, I had my first ever panic attack alone in that hotel room, and had to FaceTime my husband, who is a therapist, and helped me through that. But I was not taking care of myself, and I've since learned to set those boundaries and not to feel like I need to do more than I was doing, because I was doing enough. And so some practical tips is to change that narrative in whether internally in your head. If you're thinking you're not doing good enough, like, that's just you being your harshest critic, and we all are. And I also truly believe in facing your fears. I was terrified of going on the news. I did 9 interviews in one day for 9 different outlets on the same topic. And it really was a fake it till you make it. Like, they hired me for this job. They must believe in me, even though I'm feeling completely inadequate right now. I practiced a lot of self compassion after the fact, and gave myself some grace. Meditation. I don't meditate the same way as everybody else, but like, whatever it is, whatever gives you time to just turn your brain off. For me, it's painting my nails, just focusing on one thing. There are lots of unique ways to practice meditation, going for a walk, and cultivate forgiveness in yourself. When a big crisis happens, we want to be perfect because we've done all the trainings, we've sat through professional development, we've gotten the job, we're sitting on cabinet, we want to be like that strong leader. But no one's perfect, not even some of our fearless leaders that we respect have been perfect. And so you have to just remember to let it go, and you did the best that you could with the information that you had. And here's some solutions that I started implementing, because if there was anything I learned through all of this, it's that we were not as collaborative and clean as a team as we should have been during these crises things. So it's identifying, like, who's on first, like, what are your team dynamics like, and how do they align with comms, and identify that from the start, before the school year even starts. I identify who's going to talk about what, who's in charge. Is it all the PIO, or is it the principals? It seems simple, but when everyone is feeling the pressure, the immense pressure of something they've never navigated before, that kind of collaboration can go out the window. So it's really honing in on, this is what we're going to do. Lean on your external partners, who, like, for me, coming out of this, I ended up building a really strong relationship with the Santa Rosa Police Department's public information officer, to the point where we never released press releases without both of us approving them. So I knew what was going to be in theirs, they knew what was going to be in ours, and we timed it always to come out after the school day. So then that way parents aren't flocking to the campuses to pick up their kids. So working on those types of collaborations. Another thing is honestly hospitality. I worked in hospitality before I came into this lovely world of communications, and I will say that some of our educators, that's all they know. They knew they wanted to be in the profession of education, and so sometimes they don't have those soft skills that you might have gotten if you had come from the private sector and worked in a different thing. So I have always found that kind of going through a hospitality 101, customer service 101 with my administrators, and anyone who works at the front desk of our school sites, just so that they know, like, it's best to be seen with that warmth and that empathy while also being assertive. It goes a long way to fostering collaboration and getting people to want to work and enjoy working with you. Always remembering your why. Again, show your heart. There were times where my superintendent throughout this was criticized for being too stoic. And that was just her natural thing. But I knew what was in her heart and I knew how she felt about all of this. And I constantly encouraged her to let her true colors show. That this was not a moment to be a stoic leader. This was a moment to be an empathetic human leader. You can be a leader and have empathy. And the other thing is just to listen and understand all sides. You don't have to agree with an opposing argument, but everyone wants to be heard in these situations. And there were times where I was dealing with very angry community members and parents, and I always, and I meant it, would respond to them with like, I appreciate you sharing that information with me. I really appreciate you advocating for what's best for your student, because at the end of the day, whether I agreed or not, that is what they were doing. They felt that they were doing what was best for their student. And who am I to tell them that they're wrong? So just be that ear, be that positive. It does, and a lot of times these people wouldn't even follow up with, what are you going to do about it? It's not that that doesn't happen, but a lot of times they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard, and they want to feel and actually like see that you have heard them. So in conclusion, this is me, happy-go-lucky puppy, coming out of this crazy storm. The storms, they may not stop, but we do get better at sailing through them. And 2023 wasn't easy, but it showed me what's possible when people come together to serve students, even when things feel really overwhelming. If you're in a similar situation, I see you, and I hope you leave today feeling just a little more equipped. And most importantly, I really hope you feel affirmed. And if you have to deal with any, whether it's a board member or someone on cabinet who just isn't comfortable with that empathy side or seems a little argumentative and you need to talk to someone about it, I am your girl. I mean it 100%. Email me or call me, and I would happily talk through that, because it was, navigating personalities is a real thing. We all have to do it. Every single person has to do it. And there's some strategies that I used that worked for me, and a lot of them were just being authentic to myself, and it opened them up to be authentic as well. And so with that, do we have any questions?
I'll get the ball rolling, Vanessa. First, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so lucky to have folks like you as part of CalSPRO that are so generous in talking about things that are very vulnerable. Having been with you when you were going through all of this, I was almost worried about you revisiting this topic. It was a really rough time. So thank you for being willing to do that for the benefit of members. I was wondering about how you got Anna to see your perspective in terms of communicating with people. Because I think there are a lot of superintendents out there that, especially when things hit the fan, that they circle the wagons and they want to just keep everything really quiet. They get very defensive. And like you said, they take things personally. So how did you help Anna come to the other side of that perspective?
So, and it's not a one size fits all, but for me, I could see that she wasn't feeling like a human. She was feeling like a punching bag. And so I decided to first, I invited her to dinner and I paid for it. I didn't let her buy it. I invited her to dinner and had a heart to heart with her during that dinner, away from the office, away from it all. And I think getting out of the office, having that change of scenery also lowered her guard down a little bit. And I was just very, I would open it up to, do you want to come across like Trump, or do you want to come across like Obama? Like, who do you want? And I'm, political sides apart. There, Obama is just a wonderful speaker. And I said, how do you want to come across? Because I know how you think you're coming across, but you're not quite hitting it yet. And here are my like I just shared with her. I said, I would say it like this and have this kind of demeanor. And if you get choked up, that just makes you human. And she really was like, I think for me, I've always found that you don't have to use presidents as an example, but using something else, non-school related, as an example of like, hey, here's when this actor botched this, or here's when it didn't really go. Giving them those examples, I think really helps them see like, okay, yeah, no, I definitely don't want to be coming across like that.
Mhm. I remember watching with horror the way that your police department behaved, and just imagining that you were feeling a lot of betrayal. Um, and I believe, if I'm not thinking of the timing incorrectly, that you actually had city council weigh in on this, and they were kind of bullying you at the same time. I mean, like you guys really pretty much had everybody in Santa Rosa, you know, whacking on you at the same time. So how do you get past those feelings of betrayal and create a positive relationship going forward?
Um, At first, I took things slightly personal. And so I would say in the first day or two, it was hard. But after that, I really just kept reminding myself that regardless of if I agreed of how they were doing their job, they were doing their job just the same as I'm doing my job. And the people, when you go to a board meeting and parents are upset about something, right? And you're sitting in the audience, they could be looking at you and you're like, I literally have no decision making over whatever this is that you're upset about. So that's how I looked at them. Like, chief aside, but that's how I looked at them. Like, they're doing their job. They're doing what their editor is telling them to do. They're doing what their constituents are telling them to do. I don't agree with it. I'd be happy to have a coffee with them, but it was really treating them and looking at them really from that lens of empathy, and that they're people, and no person on this earth is perfect. And so, how can I see them as a partner and try to get past any animosity or resentment?
Answer. Anybody else have questions for Vanessa? Well, hopefully, nobody really has to use these specific lessons, because that it was just horrific to even watch you have to go through it. But thank you again for being vulnerable and sharing that experience with us, and hopefully, a lot of our members can understand that they're not alone. That there are a lot of people within the field, CalSport and beyond, that are very generous and always willing to jump in and help out if needed. Thank you again, Vanessa. You were awesome. I like your speaking style.
Thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk. No.
Yes, it was great. I'm going to end with just a couple reminders of some CalSport events that are coming up. It is a little quiet because it's summertime, and we know that you guys got to get your rest and rejuvenation in, and so that you are coming back into the school year feeling your best self and serving students in that way. So a couple things that are coming up on, June 6th already passed, but we will have an office hour in July and August. And then August 6th is the CalSport orientation. So even if you've been a CalSport member for a while, One of the things that we cover in that is all the new features and benefits of Calspra. So if you don't know how to access the member library, all the templates, all of the materials that our members share with each other, how to search the listserv. Another one we're going to make sure to include now is how to make sure you have a daily digest setting on that super active listserv. So on those crazy days, you don't get like 200 messages from people talking about a specific topic. So if any of that is of interest to you, please do join us on August 6th for our Calspra orientation. If you are going to NSPRA, Calspra would love to buy you lunch. So please make sure you go to the website and sign up for our Calspra lunch. It will be Monday of the NSPRA conference in DC. And we would love to see you there. Take care, everyone. I will stick around for anyone who has individual questions. And thank you again, Vanessa. It is always awesome to see you. And I just love to see how you have thrived, gotten through that, and emerged better than ever. So well done.
Thank you. And if there's one thing I can leave you guys with, it's set boundaries. Set boundaries. That's the best thing you can do.